by the Montana Television Network. Montana This Morning continues on Montana's News Leader.
Midterm elections are now just a day away. I'm Nicole Killian on Capitol Hill. Some of the biggest names from both parties were out in full force this weekend for the final campaign push.
And a burglary followed by a police chase and shots fired disrupted a fall Sunday in downtown Billings yesterday. Coming up, how that all happened.
Good morning to you. It is 6:30 here on your Monday. I'm Missy O'Malley with Chet Lehman. Matt Elwell will have our forecast in just a moment. With just one day to go before the midterm elections, I can't believe it's already here. It's all hands on deck on the campaign trail.
To say the least, the Republicans and the Democrats' biggest names hit the campaign trail to deliver closing arguments for their party's candidates. CBS's Nicole Killian reports this morning from Capitol Hill.
President Trump spent the last weekend before Election Day crisscrossing the country on behalf of Republican candidates.
You don't hear so much about that big blue wave anymore.
Mr. Trump has focused on immigration in the campaign's closing days.
We're not letting these people invade our country. We want them to come in. We want them to come in, but they have to come in legally. They have to come in legally.
The Democrats, led by former President Obama, have countered by making health care their key message.
When I was president, Republicans voted more than a dozen times to get rid of protections for pre-existing conditions. Last year, they fell just one vote short, and if they win on Tuesday, they might finally succeed.
The battle for control of Congress has dominated headlines for months, but across the country, local elections are being fought over just as hard.
One of the most bitterly contested is the race for governor in Georgia. Polls show the Republican nominee, Georgia Secretary of State Brian Kemp, in a tight race with the Democratic nominee, Stacey Abrams, who's hoping to become the first female African-American governor in U.S. history. On Sunday, Kemp's office opened an investigation into the Georgia Democratic Party over what it called a failed attempt to hack the state's voter registration system. Democrats are calling the move a desperate attempt to deflect attention from allegations Kemp is trying to suppress the minority vote. Nicole Killian, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
Oh, and it is not over. President Trump will hold rallies in 3 states today: Ohio, Indiana, and in Missouri.
Can't stop, won't stop.
Holy cow.
There you go.
One day to go.
One day to go.
Here we go.
And then all of your election results right here Wednesday morning.
That's correct.
Yeah. Matt, what's the verdict for our Monday weather?
It's going to happen, whether you like it or not. Temperatures into the 30s this morning. There is a chance of a few snowflakes. I think mainly we're talking rain showers, and mainly on the light side, we're just seeing little flurries of moisture try to work its way through, both literally and figuratively. I do expect to see some light rain showers through the afternoon, switching over to snow for the evening. We'll talk more about accumulation potential coming up in just a few minutes.
Thank you, Matt. Now 6:32 on this Monday. One suspect now hospitalized after an attempted burglary that turned into a police-involved shooting in Billings yesterday. 2 suspects are now in custody, a third still at large. It all started with a burglary reported to Billings police around 2:15 Sunday afternoon. When officers arrived on the scene at the 1000 block of North 31st Street, all 3 suspects were found in a silver Chevy Impala. Shots were fired, the vehicle sped away. Now, authorities found the vehicle just 1 block away at the intersection of 11th Avenue North and North Broadway. 1 suspect taken into custody. 1 was taken to St. Vincent Healthcare with a gunshot wound. The third, described as an African-American male with long black hair, took off on foot. Both Billings hospitals went into lockdown after the event. Third suspect has not yet been located.
Also in Billings yesterday, a man went to the hospital after an early morning shooting near 8th Street West and Terry Avenue. 55-year-old white male from Roundup called 911 after he had been shot. The victim had a single gunshot wound to the hip and pelvic area. Now, according to the Billings Police Department, officers interviewed people in a nearby house where the victim said the shooting occurred. Officers found a shattered storm door, bullet holes, blood, and shell casings. It appears that the suspect was shot several times and the victim from inside the vehicle. Now, the suspect is described as a teenage Hispanic man. The victim is in stable condition. Police believe that drugs were involved.
Well, with the midterm election just a day away, hundreds of thousands of people across Montana have already cast their ballot by absentee. DN's Jonathan Ambarian takes a closer look at the ballots collected so far and how they compare to previous Montana elections.
As of Sunday, more than 300,000 Montana voters' absentee ballots had already been received. That's already more absentee votes than were counted in any other midterm election in the state, and more than any presidential election except 2016. 60% of voters around the state requested absentee ballots, a total of 426,000. That's 70,000 more absentee voters than any previous Montana election. The areas with the highest rates of absentee voters include Phillips and Valley counties on the High Line, and the highly populated counties of Cascade, Gallatin, and Missoula. The state's largest county, Yellowstone, has the largest percentage. Nearly 3/4 of voters there requested absentee ballots, and 3/4 of those ballots have been returned. That means 56% of registered voters have already turned in a ballot, higher than the total voter turnout in the 2014 or 2010 midterms. What's not clear yet is how many Montanans will vote on Election Day. In 2016, almost 2/3 of the state voted absentee, and that number has been increasing at every general election. If you haven't returned your absentee ballot yet, there's still time, but you won't be able to mail it in. Ballots have to be returned by 8 p.m. on election night. That means you'll need to take it to your county elections office in person to return it. In Helena, Jonathan Amberian, MTN News.
And if you have already sent in your absentee ballot ahead of election night or wondering if the election office has received and processed it, there's a way to check. Head to Montana Secretary of State's page, My Voter page, enter your name and birth date and see your voter status, absentee ballot status, view a sample ballot, find a location for polling place, and oh, so much more.
There is a lot of helpful information on that site.
For sure.
And tonight, Bozeman School District Superintendent Rob Watson will speak at the City Commission meeting about a new reading initiative for elementary school students. MTN's Medeiros Babb has our details.
25% of Bozeman's third graders are not at the desired reading level. Superintendent Rob Watson says it can be a challenge to make sure students don't get left behind.
We have a ways to go, and so that's where our concern is, and that's where we really need to focus our efforts on not only K1, 2, and 3, but also pre-K reading skills.
To help these kids increase their reading proficiency, the district is partnering with local businesses like United Way to get books in the hands of kids even before they start elementary school. Watson says if a foundation isn't built early, more problems can come.
And what we see also is they struggle in other subject areas, so it's not just English. They struggle accessing the curriculum in science and social studies because they're struggling with reading. What that looks like in high school is they struggle in those core areas, and it could mean that they drop out of high school. So that's what we're really trying to prevent, is get kids on track early so that they're not dropping out of high school.
Watson says Bozeman is higher than most districts in the state.
We feel good about that, but we also know that there's lots of kids that are still struggling, so we need to close that gap.
Watson says one of the issues that he sees is that many kids do not read as much in the summer. The district says they will work with local partners to address this issue. In Bozeman, Medeiros Babb, MTN News.
Now, Watson says it is important for parents and the community to participate in the initiative, which is why he is presenting it at the commission meeting tonight.
In other headlines this morning, Zachary Jones of Yellowstone Grass-Fed Beef believes that the key to sustainable ranching and farming begins beneath our feet, in the soil. In this week's Under the Big Sky bonus video, Zach Jones shares his thoughts on how grazing is the key to value in our Montana soil.
Under the Big Sky is sponsored by Rocky Mountain Vein Clinic and Markovich Real Estate.
We have a lot of things going on in our environment. The improper grazing and farming of our landscapes has led to a massive burn-off of carbon from our soil into the atmosphere. Some studies actually show that between 30, maybe to even up to 50% of the legacy load of CO2 in the atmosphere, the increase from pre-industrial age levels, is from the soil, not from fossil reserves. We're talking about carbon in the soil. Grazing differently can not only stop that, but it can start to rebuild the organic carbon levels in our soils and sequester carbon back into it. There's soils in the Midwest that went from like 12% organic levels, now down to like 2 to 3%. Same thing here in Montana, a little bit less degradation, but our soil carbon levels have been decimated down to very low levels too. Getting those levels back up to 12% is absolutely huge. We have to stop soil erosion, we have to sequester carbon, and we also have to increase our water cycle ability so we have less floods. More water needs to stay in the land instead of flooding off right away. There's no fancy technology that Google or Amazon or some company is going to make that's going to be able to go out and access all of these acres and change things. There are animals grazing most surfaces of the earth every day. So we already have these agents out there that can influence and stop and then reverse these trends. Without a doubt, the changing of the way we graze and farm is the most impactful thing we can do and that we have influence over right now.
Now you can watch all our current Under the Big Sky stories online at underthebigsky.com.
Very cool.
Very cool.
Very cool. It is time for a quick break. Stay with us. In a moment here on Montana This Morning, we take a look at jobs and politics.
But first, we're going to check in with Bianca Goladriga for a look at what's coming up at 7 on CBS This Morning.
Good morning. Ahead on CBS This Morning, on the eve of the election, we have a team of correspondents across the country covering the key midterm races. We'll break down the issues driving voters to the polls and a potential breakthrough for kids suffering from a rare polio-like disease. Meet the doctor giving AFM patients a second chance. We'll see you at 7.